the Classic period, which was from 500 to 323 BCE. Greek artists began to try to create more realistic sculptures, and in order to do this, they studied the human anatomy greatly and learned how the body functions and how it moves. Now, what I mean by this is that they added more detail, meaning how when your body moves, sometimes you can see like the muscles and tendons and stuff like that popping out or moving as well. And that's what they added to their sculptures. Things like details like that, details like seeing, a hamstring or something like that, or, seeing the curvature of the abs, the curvature of pecs, the curvature of the male anatomy, things like that. This is around the time that the Greeks began depicting a lot of athletes showing with relaxed muscles, meaning it wasn't too prominent that you could see the muscles, but it was there to where you could see that they were relaxed. So they weren't necessarily protruding like maybe when you're stretching or something like that, but you could see them. You could see the outline of them. Here the figures are mainly lifelike, but the clothing that's draped over the people statues were more plainer and less detailed when compared to the rest of the body. This was because the main focus of many of the sculptures during this time period was making the human body look realistic. This came with showing athletic bodies and the ideal human forms of many of the Greek gods that citizens would strive for. Now, of course, similar to the discussion post that we had earlier in this term, when you look at a lot of the art, you see athletic bodies, you see basically the ideal man or the ideal woman to these Greek citizens. You see athletic things such as abs, such as, toned muscles, things like that. And they chose to not necessarily make the drapes too detailed or cover too much because they wanted to attract your attention to human anatomy, because this is something that you would look up to, human citizens would look up to, strive for, things like that. I have a perfect example of a statue being with drapery over them, and you could see the lack of detail in the drape, but you could see the mass, that more details put into the actual body, and it looks very human-like. This statue is called the Dresden Zeus. So it is a statue of Zeus, but at the same time, not only did they depict Zeus, they depicted regular citizens doing certain athletic attributes, I guess you could say. And lastly, the Hellenistic period, which was from 323 to 27 BCE. During this time period, a lot of sculptures were created using terracotta. The new molding techniques that were formed allowed artists to create highly detailed miniature statues with a high level of naturalism. Additionally, some grotesques were produced and created as well. These would range from hunchbacks, epileptics, and other deformed or tortured characters, which would violate the beauty Greek art always tried to depict. Now, when you look at Greek art, obviously you see a lot of perfection, as you could say, meaning the perfect athletic body, the perfect leader, bravery, things like that. Things that they considered attributes, or not attributes, would consider characteristics of a good leader, of a good man, of a good woman, things like that. Now, during this period, it was a little bit different because they also displayed grotesque characters you would never see, like almost like monsters or things that they feared. I guess you could say this was kind of like their form of character, meaning like it's kind of out there, it's kind of, wacky and different and things like that. Now, the meaning of Hellenism, which I found really interesting when I was looking it up, was described as like an admiration for ideas, style, culture, classical Greek civilization. I thought this was really funny and really, interesting, because when you look at the Hellenistic period, it's like, yeah, they are building upon, the Greek art and architecture that it was already in place, meaning with how the Greeks started developing more details into the anatomy of the human's body and things like that. But on top of that, they kind of altered what Greek art was about, meaning it didn't just focus on the beauty of what society wants from its citizens and its leaders and things like that, but it also showed like their fears. It also showed realistic images, because Greek sculptures from the Hellenistic era brought about more motion and stronger expressions of emotions in their sculptures, meaning you could have a sculpture that was angry, you could have a sculpture that was going to war, you could have a sculpture that was laying down, things like that, things that are realistic. Artists didn't limit the body of the sculpture as well as their facial expressions, so there was way more facial expressions rather than just the basic smiling or basic straight face. You had emotions, you had fear, you had anger, you had, despair, you had torture, and that was something that was completely different. This brought like an exciting, broader range of various moods and scenes that were brought to life by the sculpture's expressions. Now, some examples of these that I found really interesting was Laocoon and his sons. As you can see, him and his sons are dealing with snakes that are wrapping around them and things like that. And if you look closely, it's if Laocoon is in pain and he has that expression of pain, and his sons look almost frustrated and tired and things like that, and that's something that we normally wouldn't have seen in Greek culture. Now I'm going to also bring your attention to the punishment of Darius, which is Furnace bull. As you can see, the Greeks are struggling with this bull. Not only does the bull have an expression of pain and fear, but you could see the expression of the Greeks struggling, and the Greeks may be frustrated and upset within this painting, which was very, very eye-opening. Overall, I generally enjoyed doing this project because I didn't truly realize how much Greek and Roman art, especially in sculpture form, evolved throughout the periods. I was just like, they're very similar. There's just slight differences here and there, but those slight differences really made a big difference and, changed the expression and the way of storytelling for a lot of both of these societies. And, they did them differently because Romans focused mostly on portraits, meaning mostly on just a single person and things like that. Didn't show that much action as the Greek did with the human anatomy and showing their gods and action and things like that, or the perfect citizen, perfect human, and things like that. But similarly, they both did choose to display their gods, and even when they display their gods, they both use extensive details to just show the godlike appearance, the beauty that they saw within their gods, the the beauty that they wanted to express to their citizens as well. And this slide shows you all my sources that I used for my project. If anybody is interested, you could click on it. I really enjoyed reading a lot of these, especially the Khan Academy article and the Greek Made Simple article, because it gives you a lot of details that maybe not necessarily a textbook would give us, and it kind of dives into each period of art for the Roman and Greek cultures, societies, in great detail, more detail than what we would normally see in our textbook. And I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation and hope you have the best rest of the term.